It's only a movie, Mr. Paley. I'll bring you some popcorn.
An underappreciated adventure film that was an early pioneer in the genre of filming actors in empty sets and then worrying about the rest later. It's a love letter to classic comics and serials, where Captain Joe Sullivan and Polly Perkins are on the trail of the mysterious and nefarious Dr Totenkopf, and his even more mysteriouser and nefariouser plane.
What have you got me into this time, Joseph?
Sky Captain and the World of Tommorow!
I don't want to hurt you.
Sky Captain and the World of Tommorow is a 2004 film written and directed by Kerry Conran and set in an alternate version of 1939. Reporter Polly Perkins possesses an abundance of both moxie and gumption, and also has a pretty sweet giant television in her office. Though history does not record whether it's LED with micro dimming or just plain LCD, she's on the trail of some missing scientists. One of the scientists, Dr. Vargas, has a message for another completely different but very similar looking scientist, Dr. Jennings, who does meet with Polly Perkins to tell her of the scientists being murdered, and of course he's next. Before long, New York is under attack from giant robots. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, who's going to soil themselves over an attack from extremely tiny robots? Okay, maybe the Smurfs or Stuart Little, they might be a bit worried by tiny robots, I grant you. But for everyone else, the killer robots have to be giant size in order for them to be really scary.
A toy robot?
Eat lead, sucker.
The call goes out to Sky Captain, who swoops in and repulses the attack.
Joe.
Sky Captain, aka Joseph Sullivan, has a history with Polly Perkins, but like Sweeney Todd's housewarming party, it didn't end well.
You're not still mad at me, are you?
You sabotaged my plane.
Joe and Polly's history is such that working together would be about as much fun as trying to introduce a new pet velociraptor to your adult cat. I mean, honestly, that one could go either way. The blueprints found by Polly mean that they'll have to work together. Dr. Jennings is found dead, killed by a mysterious assassin, though Polly pockets some vials that may or may not be important. Back at Sky Captain's base, his best buddy Dex is on the case, where the engineering wizard finds a clue to the mystery. Sky Captain's base is attacked by even more robots, but this time they're flying robots. Despite Joe leading them away from the base, it is mostly flattened and Dex is kidnapped, though he does leave a hint for Joe and Polly to follow.
Good boy, Dex.
They're soon on the trail of Dr. Totenkopf, a brilliant but of course evil scientist who's so brilliant and of course evil that he must be stopped at all costs.
Clues about a countdown, but to what, I don't know. I fear time is running out.
Throughout all of this, Polly wants the story and is keeping the existence of those mysterious vials to herself, perhaps with a thought to calling them Yoni Wellness Sticks and selling them at a substantial markup on a website that Polly Perkins would name after herself, Poop. The trail leads them to Nepal, but Polly ends up with only 2 shots left on her camera, and she has to be really careful of what she uses them on, not the wondrous creatures or floating air bases, or even the legendary Shangri-La.
I only have 2 shots left.
This is of course a running gag throughout the movie, but if this happened to me in real life, chances are that the last picture on my camera would be of an IKEA tag so I knew where to grab an 8-nook Kallax from in the warehouse, and the second last pic would be of where I parked when I was at IKEA to buy the Kallax. Joe enlists the help of an old friend, Frankie Cook, commander of a floating aircraft carrier, which is either an aircraft carrier or an aircraft carrier aircraft. Polly is a little jealous, since she suspects that Joe had at one time cheated on her with Frankie, and Polly does not believe him one bit when Joe denies anything ever happened with Frankie. Nothing ever happened with Frankie. He's never had any fling with Frankie, and that he only has an eye for Polly. Frankie's pilots provide cover for Joe and Polly to get past Totenkopf's outer defences. Joe and Polly creep closer and closer to Totenkopf's lair, seeing all manner of wonderful beasts, none of which are good enough for Polly to take a snap of. Now, Polly would make a lousy wedding photographer, where she'd refuse to take a picture of the happy couple in case another wedding party with a better looking bride and groom came along.
You honestly think you're going to find something more important than every single creature on Earth being led 2 by 2 inside a giant rocket ship?
Totenkopf turns out to be not quite what they expected, since he died some time ago and had his mind uploaded into a computer. Even though he's a computer, Totenkopf still has all the brilliance and of course evil that he had as a man, but now with the benefit that nothing can stop him now, apart from a last-minute system update. Then restart your computer, and then there's another update. Restart again. But after that, he's all good to go. Totenkopf's master plan is to send up a rocket ark and destroy the Earth so he can then rebuild it. The one problem with Totenkopf's bucket list You know, he may have left it just a little bit late. He's been dead quite a while. I mean, this happens a lot. Procrastinating, where you hope to get everything perfectly in place before acting on one's life ambition. However, if your life's ambition is the complete and utter destruction of all life on Earth, perhaps it's time to find a new, slightly less destructive hobby, like using C4 on a pottery wheel. Even when Totenkopf had had a change of heart just before he died decades ago, his machine creations kept going with his original plan. This does hit home, since I worked out if I was hit by a bus tomorrow, the DVR would keep recording reruns of The Big Bang Theory for at least the next 60 years. No one wants that.
Could we just for once die without all this bickering?
Joe and Polly face off against more robots and, of course, the mysterious woman, who turns out to be yet another robot. And then the pair have to stop the rocket. They do win the day, with Totenkopf's plan falling down faster than an elephant taking hang gliding lessons, and Polly finally gets to take her last picture.
Lens cat.
Sky Captain. Sky Captain. So, is it a live-action film with animated backdrops, or a cartoon with live actors? Well, Gwyneth Paltrow. It was hoped at the time that Sky Captain would herald in a new type of filmmaking where actors were shot against blue and composited into sets and backgrounds generated by CG artists, though in the end only a few productions would follow its example.
When we were running, I shot the ground.
Sky Captain started as a short film made by Kerry Conran in his apartment over a number of years. He'd originally studied film but realised that he could be working his way up the ladder for years and still never get a chance to make the sort of film he wanted to make. Or he could just do it himself on his home computer. By the 90s, you could do computer graphics and video on a home computer, but things took a long time, especially when you try to balance filmmaking with paying work. Now look, I completely understand. I balance making videos on YouTube with my day job as a door-to-door door salesman, where I go house to house carrying a sample door. It's usually a Pacific Ash job these days, you know, the ones with little frosted windows. Can't do hickory anymore, not with my back. Sometimes when I'm on my lunch break, people will come up to me and ask me how they could get a foot in the door of the door selling industry. And I just tell them to shut the front door. I'm trying to eat my goddamn lunch. Do I look like some kind of door guru? Jeez Louise. Although I do like the organ solo to light my fire.
I told you I don't know what you're talking about. You'll just have to kill us. As you wish.
Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent here. This is a video about Sky Captain and not selling doors. And so I absolutely promise there will be no further mentions of doors, gates, portals, hatches, or portcullises.
Ask him where is Totenkopf. Tell him it's important we find him.
Kerry Conran had intended to eventually produce a complete movie by filming whoever he could wrangle to appear against a blue screen, and then he would later fill in the background with computer-generated imagery. Though after several years of toil, he'd basically made a short film running around 6 minutes. Producer John Avnet saw a tape of the short and got together money from Aurelio De Laurentiis to finance more of the production, but still on a very tight budget. Paramount would come in late in the day as a distributor, where the studio kicked in the money to finish the movie. In the earliest days of computer-generated effects for movies, films like The Last Starfighter used CG to create all of its space-based special effects of starfighters battling capital ships. They had used a Cray supercomputer for the effects, but advances in home computing power and software in the 90s made it possible to use home computers to create special effects. Science fiction show Babylon 5 was an early attempt to create all of a TV show's special effects completely in the digital realm. Of course, it wasn't one computer, but the production would use an array of Commodore Amiga computers. So rather than one giant computer that cost more than $1 million, you could now leverage the power of dozens of networked home computers in a render farm. Man, that nerd Dean down at Best Buy must have thought all of his Christmases had come at once. True story, I once owned a render farm, but it was foreclosed on by Autodesk after I defaulted on my subscription payments.
You mean this could really work?
To make a full feature film version of Sky Captain, Conran would bring in a few others. Kerry Conran would direct in what was his first feature, with artist brother Kevin functioning as production designer. To make the film's effects on a shoestring budget, a small army of artists was put together in Los Angeles, where they toiled away for a few years on generating backdrops, props, vehicles, creatures, and whatever else was needed for the movie. It's all too easy to dismiss the film as something where the live-action portion was dashed out in an afternoon, and then a small army of artists pressed a button which quickly pumped out the backdrops in a few days. But to anyone who's ever worked professionally with computer graphics, I do feel your pain at how undervalued and misunderstood CG and visual effects are.
Show me what?
First, the film was storyboarded, and then a computer pre-visualization was created. Basically, a very low-res animatic of all of the action created using audio recordings of the cast from a script read-through. Another version of the action was shot with doubles in Los Angeles to give the animators something to work with well before the actors were filmed. A production facility was set up in Los Angeles with a 100-strong crew of artists who would put together the artwork and backdrops for the scenes that would not be shot for many months before there was eventually a 26-day live-action shoot at Elstree in the UK. The cast were mainly shot against blue backdrops with high-definition cameras, often with some actors filming their scenes on their own. Throughout the movie, there would be scenes with parts of sets, a railing, a table, a cockpit or whatever.
There's nothing there.
But only one scene was shot on a traditional set, a scene set in Polly's office with Michael Gambon playing her newspaper editor.
Who knows what's waiting for us out there?
Kerry Conran had taken influences from a variety of sources: old comic books, 30s movies, adventure and science fiction serials. You can see inspirations everywhere, from Fleischer's Superman cartoons, screwball comedies, expressionist cinema, Art Deco and other classic early 20th century designs. It's not just the look of old films, but the forms. The film's opening montage would see more dissolves than a serial killer's bathtub. Jude Law was Sky Captain Joseph Sullivan, a dashing hero with a thin sliver of roguish charmer bubbling away in the background.
I want that blueprint, Polly.
I want the story, Joe.
Gwyneth Paltrow was Polly Perkins in the years when she was a working actress, rather than the reason that somebody would later make a very good income from sanitizing jade eggs.
What is that?
Angelina Jolie worked on the film for a total of 3 days, where her character has very little screen time, though despite this she appears in much of the film's marketing.
And started yelling,
"Protect the rabbits! Protect the rabbits!"
Jolie's appearance was more than a cameo, but not quite a full supporting role, so it's more of a supameo. Jolie's star power was such that she was able to make a role with barely any screen time quite memorable.
Oh great, we all made up.
Giovani Ribisi was Dex, and Bai Ling was the enigmatic, mysterious woman who spends almost the entire film lurking before having a big showdown with Joe at the end. And, as Dr Totenkopf, an actor who'd been dead since 1989, Sir Laurence Olivier. Now, that is method acting. The rest of the cast was made up of British actors, though history does not record how many of them actually met Paltrow, Law or Jolie, despite apparently being in the same scene.
I never fooled around on you.
I sabotaged your plane.
3 months.
Sky Captain is an enjoyable adventure film propelled by a solid cast, but sometimes the chemistry's not quite right.
I move my mouth, words come out.
Of course, it's incredibly hard for actors to do their best work on an empty blue set with almost nothing to react to. It can be quite alienating for many performers, especially at a time before almost every major movie was made that way. This is a case where a director more experienced with working with actors may have yielded dividends. Look, it's very easy to be an armchair critic. So hang on, let me get comfy. That's better. The film is screaming for bigger performances to inject more life into the proceedings. Some of the films that came after Sky Captain that used similar techniques tended to have broader and more energetic performances that perhaps reduced the alienation a viewer might get from watching something so unreal. Sky Captain does tend to invite the viewer to concentrate more on how a scene was achieved than the scene itself. Films like Sin City and 300 would take the ball and run with it, but soon enough the virtual set concept was soon pounded into the ground like a meteorite bullied by an insecure comet. So, depending on your point of view, Sky Captain is either a brilliant comic book style adventure that would push the envelope of making films with computers, or it just looks a little bit stiff, like a PS3 intro cutscene. I lean more towards the former, since I love me a good adventure film, and for me, Sky Captain is a pretty fun time. Not necessarily Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade type of fun, but yeah, High Road to China, Richard Chamberlain's Alan Quatermain movies, or Rocketeer. The thought occurs that so many of those Indiana Jones-style adventure films that failed often had the impression that they wanted to do more, but were hamstrung by tiny budgets. Kerry Conran attempted to skirt around that issue of scale by using computer animation to fill in the gaps.
How's a Tibetan?
When the film was ultimately released in September of 2004, it did not do all that well, bringing in just shy of $60 million worldwide against a stated production budget of $70 million. That final budget was disputed by the Conrans, who maintained that the actual budget was much lower, but either way, Kerry Conran did not end up directing another major motion picture. That is a pity, since I loved the vision on display here, and I certainly would have appreciated either a follow-up or another film from Conran. Sky Captain is not perfect, and there are moments where the way the film was made does engender a disjointed feel to some of the performances. Sky Captain and the World of Tommorow ends up as a solid adventure film that perhaps ends up as more of a pioneering tech demo than leading the charge of a bold new type of filmmaking. The film has since become a cult classic, which on balance is not a bad thing. If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.